Welcome to our explainer on these truly chilling first-hand sleepover accounts. I am so glad you're joining us today because we are jumping straight into the deep end. We're going to break down the timelines, the crazy physical layouts, and the sheer escalating terror of 3 specific case files to understand exactly what went wrong. It's a totally universal question, isn't it? You know the feeling. Have you ever been sitting in a quiet room, completely convinced you were by yourself, only to get that sudden, undeniable sinking feeling that maybe someone else is watching you? Well, today we're examining 3 distinct scenarios where that exact feeling wasn't just paranoia. It was a very physical, very terrifying reality. So let's look at the facts of these accounts step by step. Okay, let's dive into this. What's your name, kid? You sure it's not Anthony? I mean, wow, this seemingly innocent yet completely impossible question is literally the spark that ignites our first case file. It's the exact moment a harmless joke flips into a genuine, immediate threat. But to understand how we get here, we kind of need to set the scene. Which brings us to case file 1, the prank call. Our narrator is looking back at a time when he was 15 years old, hanging out at his best friend Anthony's house for the weekend while Anthony's parents were out of town. It starts exactly how you'd expect, right? Riding bikes, coming in through the back door, and just playing endless rounds of FIFA and Call of Duty with junk food all over the floor. But they get bored, and they pivot to making prank calls to random numbers. And man, things spiral out of control with terrifying speed. Look at this timeline. At 10 p.m., the calls begin. The narrator dials a random number, fumbles through some joke, and the guy on the other end, who says his name is Bob, asks the narrator's name. When the narrator lies, Bob asks, "You sure it's not Anthony?" Remember, the caller ID should only show the narrator's dad's name, and these kids aren't even on public sharing sites yet. They actually search Yahoo Answers trying to figure out how this is technologically possible, but find absolutely nothing. Then, just 30 minutes later, the front doorknob slowly starts to turn. The lock catches it. The narrator peeks through the blinds and sees a tall guy staring right back at him. Suddenly, they hear the backyard gate open. The narrator realizes with absolute dread that he forgot to lock the back door. He rushes to the hallway, but freezes. There's a silhouette standing right outside the glass. The man opens the door and steps inside. The boys silently sprint upstairs and dive straight under Anthony's bed, hiding behind a cloth that hangs down to the floor. Now listen to the systematic way this intruder searches the house. Step 1, they hear every single door downstairs open one by one. Then, heavy thumps coming up the stairs. The bedroom door opens. Step 2, footsteps move over to the closet. The boys are listening in agonizing suspense as coat hangers slide and the fabric of jackets rub together. Finally, step 3, the footsteps move directly to the bed and just stop. The narrator actually has to cover Anthony's mouth with his hand because his breathing is just way too loud in the dead silence of that room. After what feels like an absolute eternity, the narrator moves his hand and whispers, asking if they should make a run for it. But before Anthony can even answer, a haunting, disturbing scream fills the room. The intruder violently drags Anthony out from under the bed. The narrator crawls out, sees his best friend struggling, and frantically scans the room. He grabs literally the only thing available, a screwdriver sitting right on the nightstand, and drives it directly into the intruder's back. The man screams in agony and lets go, giving the boys a split-second window to escape. They know running out to the street will give them away, so they sprint out the back door and dive behind a bush in the adjacent woods. Seconds later, the back door opens again. The man steps out into the yard. The narrator recalls the sheer terror of feeling the man's eyes literally pass over their hiding spot in the dark. Suddenly, the intruder locks onto them and charges. The boys run blindly through the woods, but the deafening crunch of leaves beneath their feet is betraying their exact location. They dive face down into the leaves. The heavy footsteps charge toward them, slowing down just 2 trees away before finally taking off in another direction. So they wait. Then they cautiously navigate back to the house, this time making absolutely sure to lock the back door. Anthony stays on the phone with the police while the narrator patrols the windows. Looking out into the pitch-black yard, he makes a super bold move and flicks on the backyard floodlights. Instantly, in the distance, illuminated by the sudden light, the man is standing perfectly still in front of a large tree. He then turns, walks back into the woods, and completely disappears. The narrator notes that in the 5 years since this horrifying event, nothing else has ever happened. Was it linked to the prank call? I mean, it defies logical explanation, but it remains a terrifying, unsolved mystery. All right, so that immediate threat of a home invasion is terrifying, but case file 2 shifts to something far more insidious. This one starts with a husband who just needs to get away. After a massive argument with his wife over a toilet seat, of all things, he can't handle the yelling anymore, so he calls up his buddy Paul and crashes at his place for the night. They have a few beers, catch up, and Paul tells him to make himself at home. Now, the central puzzle piece of this case is the bizarre architecture of Paul's house. It's like a weird maze. He has a massive home with 3 guest bedrooms, all lined up in a row on one side of the hallway, while Paul's own master bedroom sits entirely separated across the hall. The narrator takes the first guest bedroom. But here's the kicker. Paul always keeps the other 2 adjacent guest rooms deadbolted. He claims he stores valuable personal belongings in them. As the narrator tries to sleep, he starts hearing strange noises coming from the supposedly locked empty room right next door. Initially, he just thinks it's Paul. He gets annoyed, walks over, but the knob is locked tight. He checks Paul's room across the hall, and Paul is already in bed, insisting he didn't hear a thing and telling him to just go back to sleep. So the narrator obliges. A half hour passes, he's finally drifting off when he hears a distinct, faint tap right on the shared wall. And then, chillingly, a muffled whisper from the other side. He jolts out of bed and runs straight back to Paul. This time, Paul takes him seriously. Paul grabs his keys and unlocks the middle bedroom. Immediately, a cold breeze hits them. The window is wide open, the bed looks slept in, and the closet is completely empty of Paul's valuables. Instead, there are just random, scattered bags everywhere. Paul panics and rushes to unlock the third, final guest bedroom. The second that door swings open, they are just in time to see a black figure leap out of the open window and onto the patio roof below, vanishing into the night. So the crucial point is what they discover left behind in that third room. They wisely decide not to chase the figure outside, and honestly, it's a very good thing they didn't. Inside the room, the white bedsheets are severely stained with blood, and lying right there on the closet floor is a missing butcher knife from Paul's own kitchen, complete with fresh blood spots. All of Paul's valuables completely stripped from the room. The pieces horrifyingly fall into place here. Dangerous strangers, likely homeless individuals dealing with severe drug addiction, had somehow infiltrated those locked rooms and had been secretly living inside Paul's home for over a week. Earlier that very night, Paul had actually complained to the narrator about how fast his groceries were disappearing lately, joking that he must just have a high metabolism. Suddenly, that missing food made perfect, terrifying sense. They were living, sleeping, and eating right under his nose, completely undetected, all because of the bizarre layout of the house. Okay, moving to case file 3, the tall, dark figure. This final account strips away the physical evidence we just saw and leaves us with something entirely unexplainable. We're looking at a memory from a narrator who was just 10 years old, experiencing his very first childhood sleepover at his friend Jordan's house. Jordan's house has this massive basement. The 2 10-year-olds play video games until 1 in the morning, skip brushing their teeth, and just fall asleep right there on the couches. Classic sleepover, right? But sometime in the middle of the night, the narrator wakes up. The TV had been left on, projecting this very dim, blank screen, and it provides just enough light to illuminate the far corner of the basement by the stairs. Standing there is a massive, towering object. The narrator can't even describe its shape, only noting its impossible height. It literally almost reaches the basement ceiling. As he stares at this towering mass by the stairs, the TV suddenly clicks off. The basement is instantly plunged into total, suffocating darkness. I mean, imagine the sheer terror of the light vanishing while knowing that massive thing is in the room with you. It nearly makes the 10-year-old scream, but instead, his survival instinct kicks in. He shuts his eyes tight and lies entirely motionless on the couch, completely paralyzed by fear. He doesn't even remember falling back asleep. The very next thing he registers is being jolted awake by the jarring sound of sudden, horrid screaming echoing down from the upper floor of the house. It's Jordan's mother. The 2 boys lock eyes in the dark, jump off the couches, and sprint frantically up the stairs. When they reach the master bedroom, Jordan's mother is sitting on her bed, sobbing hysterically. Now, this is where the separate data points of this story align perfectly. The narrator saw an indescribable towering object by the basement stairs. Well, years later, when the narrator brings this event up as an adult, Jordan reveals that his mother actually refuses to talk about that night. But she did confess one crucial detail to him. She started screaming because she woke up to see a tall, dark figure standing right by her bedroom door. the narrator realizes with absolute certainty that the massive object he saw in the basement had quietly made its way upstairs. And this leaves us with the most disturbing fact of the whole explainer. That night, Jordan's father barged past the terrified boys and turned the entire house completely upside down, searching for an intruder. But he found absolutely nothing. Every single door was locked, every window was sealed shut. There were 0 signs of forced entry, and critically, 0 signs of an exit. Whatever that towering dark figure was, it entered the home invisibly, moved freely between the floors, and vanished without leaving a single physical trace behind. We've looked at the data from these case files today. We've seen how quickly a simple prank can invite a predator, how easily dangerous strangers can live undetected right behind locked doors, and how some intrusions defy all physical explanation. By breaking down these accounts, we see that the safety of our own homes is sometimes just an illusion. So it brings us to a final necessary question to leave you with. The next time you are lying in bed and you hear a faint creak in the floorboards or a tap on the wall, are you absolutely sure you're alone? Thank you for exploring this deep dive with me today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time.